The popular TV show Deadliest Catch is facing a crisis. Their crab traps that normally come in loaded with snow crab and king crab are coming up empty this year. The crabs have mysteriously vanished from the Bering Sea off the coast of Alaska, where the popular Discovery show is filmed.
The world was told they simply starved, a convenient explanation for a 10 billion body disappearance. But the official narrative is hiding a biological anomaly that defies every law of nature. In late 2022, a headline rippled through the global news cycle like a shockwave. 10 billion snow crabs had vanished from the Bering Sea. It was a mass disappearance of such staggering proportions that the Alaskan crab season was canceled for the first time in history. The official narrative, provided by state agencies and mainstream climate scientists, was convenient. The water warmed, their metabolism spiked, and they simply ate themselves into extinction. But this explanation is a mask for a biological anomaly that defies every known law of nature. This wasn't a mass death, it was a synchronized exodus. While the public looked at the rising temperatures of the surface, the military was tracking a low-frequency signal calling them back to the deep. Today we reveal the Blue Blood Protocol and why the Bering Sea is now a graveyard of empty shells because the owners have finally been recalled. To understand where they went, we first need to understand what they are. At minus 1.8 degrees Celsius, human blood turns into shards of ice in minutes. Our cellular membranes rupture, and our biological processes grind to a halt. But at the bottom of the Bering Sea, something is walking. It's not swimming, it's marching with surgical precision across a landscape of liquid ice. If we found a creature with this physiology on Europa or Enceladus, we would call it the greatest discovery in human history. But it is here in our own backyard, and is hiding a biological secret that NASA has been obsessed with for decades. The secret lies in the color of their life force. While every terrestrial mammal relies on iron-based hemoglobin to carry oxygen, a system that thickens and fails as temperatures drop, these creatures utilize the Blue Blood Protocol. Their blood is built on a foundation of hemocyanin. It is copper-based, not iron-based. This isn't just a quirk of evolution, it is a masterpiece of extreme engineering. Why does a creature with no heart as we know it, and blood made of copper, possess a navigation system more accurate than our billion-dollar satellites? In the freezing depths, copper is a superior conductor. Hemocyanin allows their blood to remain fluid and hyper-efficient at temperatures that would freeze a human solid. But it goes deeper than oxygen transport. Hemocyanin is a liquid tech. At high pressures, it acts as a stabilizing agent for their internal organs, preventing the crush that claims so many other deep-sea species. While our blood thickens and fails in the cold, theirs optimizes. It's as if their bodies were engineered specifically for a world that hasn't existed on Earth for millions of years, a world of extreme cold and immense atmospheric pressure. This leads us to the armor of God, the 2 centimeters thick exoskeleton that protects this copper-circuited interior. To the casual observer, it is just a shell. To a material scientist, it is a multi-layered combat suit. This armor is composed of a complex lattice of chitin and calcium carbonate, reinforced with trace minerals that the crabs mine from the seafloor silt. It is a biological ceramic that is lighter than aluminum, but possesses a structural integrity that can withstand the weight of a skyscraper. But why the armor? And why the copper? If these creatures were merely scavengers, as the textbooks claim, such over-engineering would be a waste of metabolic energy. Nature is rarely redundant. The fact that they possess a high-conductivity blood system and a pressure-rated exoskeleton suggests they were built for the long march, a journey through zones of the Earth where no other life can persist. They are biological sensors roaming the crust of the planet, gathering data through their sensitive, hair-like setae that can detect a vibration in the water from miles away. The most disturbing realization is the surgical precision of their movement. When you observe a mass of these creatures, they do not move like a chaotic swarm of insects. They move like a phalanx. They follow magnetic ley lines that we are only beginning to map with our most advanced magnetometers. They are sensitive to the Earth's magnetic heartbeat in a way that suggests they aren't just living on the planet, they are integrated into its operating system. As we prepared to investigate the 2022 disappearance, we discovered that the starvation theory holds no water when you look at the empty shell phenomenon. In the areas where the 10 billion were supposed to have died, there are no corpses. There are no mountains of rotting chitin. There is only silence. It is as if they were never there. Or more accurately, as if they all stood up at once and walked into a door that we cannot see. The Blue Blood Protocol was never about survival in the Bering Sea. It was about survival for the journey beyond the Bering Sea. We are looking at a species that was designed to be the ultimate deep-water infantry, and in 2022, they received their orders. The copper blood wasn't just for the cold. It was for the conductivity required to hear a signal from the deepest trenches of the Arctic, a signal that told them it was time to return to the source. As we move into the horror of their rebirth and the mechanical violence of their growth, we must ask ourselves, if 10 billion soldiers of the deep have been recalled, what is the command preparing for? The Bering Sea is empty, but the deepest parts of our world are suddenly getting very crowded. To understand the disappearance of 10 billion souls, you must first understand the price they pay to stay in the game. In the biological world, growth is usually a passive, gradual expansion. But for the inhabitants of the Bering Sea, growth is a violent reconstruction. They call it the mutta, the molt. But don't let the clinical term fool you. This isn't just a change of clothes. It is a ritual of self-mutilation that borders on the mechanical. Imagine skinning yourself alive 20 times in a single lifetime, knowing that if you fail for even a second, the abyss will consume you. This is the 30% mortality tax they pay just to exist. For a snow crab, the very armor that protects it from the crushing pressure of the deep is also its coffin. As the soft tissues inside grow, the rigid chitinous suit becomes a prison. To escape, the crab must secrete enzymes that dissolve the connection between its flesh and its skeleton. It then absorbs massive amounts of seawater, swelling its body until the old armor literally explodes at the seams. It must then crawl out of its own mouth, pulling every leg, every gill, and even the lining of its stomach out of the old casing. During this window, they are soft shells, gelatinous, defenseless, and utterly vulnerable. If a single limb gets stuck, they die. If a predator finds them, they die. If the water chemistry is slightly off and the new shell doesn't harden fast enough, the pressure of the ocean simply collapses them into a pulp. This is the first clue to their 2022 disappearance. A creature that survives a 30% death rate just to grow doesn't simply starve because the water got a few degrees warmer. They are built for trauma. They are built for the edge. But the true mystery isn't how they grow, it's how they move. When you look at a crab marching across the silt, you're looking at a feat of engineering that defies standard terrestrial biology. Humans and most land animals rely on the contraction of muscle fibers pulling on bone. These creatures do not. They are hydraulic machines. They move using a complex hydraulic pressure system fueled by their own blue, copper-rich blood. By pumping hemocyanin into their extremities at varying pressures, they extend and retract their limbs with a precision that mimics a high-end industrial robot. They don't have muscles in the way we understand them. They have internal pistons. This hydraulic nature gives them a strength-to-weight ratio that is terrifying. With a grip strength of over 1 ton, these creatures don't just walk, they anchor themselves into the very crust of the earth. But what are they holding on for? What moves in the Bering Sea currents that requires a ton of force to resist? Standard oceanography tells us the currents at the bottom of the Bering Sea are manageable. Yet, the crabs are evolved to lock in. Their claws aren't just for defense or eating, they are industrial-grade clamps. When the recall began in 2022, military sonar didn't just see a swarm, they saw a synchronized deployment. These hydraulic systems allowed them to march straight through underwater storms and seismic shifts that would have tossed any other species like autumn leaves. They weren't being swept away by the current, they were fighting it, using that 1-ton grip to stay tethered to the seafloor as they moved toward the deep. This mechanical nature leads to another biological impossibility, the sleepless migration. During the Great Trek, a journey that can span over 200 kilometers of rugged, pitch-black terrain, the crabs do not stop. They do not rest. They do not hunker down in the silt to recover. They walk for months without a single second of sleep. In the world of advanced biology, sleep is the tax paid for having a complex nervous system. From birds to whales to humans, the brain requires downtime to clear metabolic waste. But the concept of sleep, the biological necessity for every advanced life form on Earth, does not apply to them. They are perpetual motion machines. Because their movement is hydraulic and their blood is a highly conductive copper-based fluid, they don't suffer from the same metabolic fatigue that iron-based organisms do. Their nervous system is decentralized, spread throughout their body in a series of ganglia. This allows them to stay in a state of permanent operational readiness. Think about the implications for the 2022 exodus. If 10 billion individuals are capable of marching 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without the need for rest, they can vanish from a survey area with a speed that defies ecological modeling. They didn't die off over a season, they clocked out. They engaged their hydraulic pistons, locked their copper circuits into a singular direction, and marched. While scientists were looking for carcasses, the crabs were already 100 miles away, moving with a tireless, mechanical gait that no starvation model could account for. They weren't exhausted by the warming water, they were overclocked. The increase in temperature didn't kill them. It acted as a catalyst, a surge in the power grid that allowed their hydraulic systems to move faster, harder, and further than ever before. The Muda ritual taught them that life is a series of violent reconstructions. The hydraulic system gave them the power to anchor against the world, and the lack of sleep gave them the time to escape. But as they marched, they weren't just moving as individuals. They were beginning to link up. They were transitioning from independent machines into something far more dangerous, a singular, hive-mind entity. And that is where the story takes a turn into the impossible. Because to navigate the dark, you don't just need strength and stamina. You need a map. And their map doesn't exist on paper. It's written in the Earth's very core. To understand the scale of the mystery, one must first understand the void. At 300 meters below the surface of the Bering Sea, the concept of direction ceases to exist for any human-centric sensory organ. There's no sunlight to provide a compass, no starlight for celestial navigation, and the topography of the seafloor is a featureless expanse of shifting silt and glacial debris. For a human diver, it is a sensory deprivation chamber that induces madness within minutes. Yet for Cyannoacetes the snow crab, this dark desert is as legible as a neon-lit city map. Every year, these creatures engage in a migratory trek that covers over 200 kilometers. They do not wander, they march. In 2022, as the heat wave hit, researchers tracked individual specimens that moved with a terrifyingly linear focus. Even more baffling is their return. After months of dispersal, they returned specific 100-meter patches of ocean floor, mating grounds the size of a backyard, after traveling a distance equivalent to walking from New York to Philadelphia in total darkness. In the world of vertebrate biology, this is an impossibility. Navigation of this precision requires a hippocampus, the region of the brain responsible for spatial memory and cognitive mapping. The snow crab has no hippocampus. It has no central cortex. Its brain is a series of ganglia, a decentralized knot of nerves that, by all rights, should only be capable of the most basic, if-then responses. If hunger, eat. If shadow, hide. They have no hippocampus, no complex brain, yet they possess a spatial memory that rivals a supercomputer. Some researchers believe they aren't looking at a map, they are feeling the Earth's magnetic heartbeat. The theory of magnetoreception suggests that the snow crab's nervous system is actually a biological magnetometer. They are not seeing the mud, they are feeling the subtle, invisible curves of the Earth's magnetic field lines as they ripple through the crust. Their copper-based blood, hemocyanin, may play a role here, acting as a liquid conductor that vibrates in resonance with the planet's electromagnetic pulse. To a crab, a change in the magnetic declination is as loud as a siren. When the 10 billion disappeared, they weren't fleeing blindly, they were following a magnetic highway that led to depths we have yet to map. If their individual navigation is a feat of engineering, their collective behavior is a feat of nightmare. Fishermen in the high latitudes have long told stories of the Muros de Cangrejos, the walls of crabs. For years, marine biologists dismissed these as exaggerations of crowded feeding frenzies. But during the 2021 to 2022 population collapse, ROV footage captured something far more organized. They do not just gather, they assemble. When a predator, be it a giant Pacific octopus or the crushing steel doors of a bottom trawl net, approaches, the crabs do not scatter in a every-man-for-himself panic. Instead, they trigger an emergent behavioral protocol. They begin to stack. They lock their serrated walking legs into the carapaces of their neighbors, forming a literal wall of shields. The larger males take the outer perimeter, their massive claws facing outward like the pikes of a Macedonian phalanx, while the smaller females and juveniles are pulled into the center of the mound. When the sky attacks, these solitary monsters become a single, coordinated unit. No commander, no language, just a collective response that mirrors military formations. Who taught them to form a phalanx? This is emergent intelligence. There is no king crab giving orders. There is no chemical pheromone fast enough to coordinate a stack of 10,000 individuals in seconds. Instead, each crab follows a local rule that, when multiplied by thousands, creates a global architecture. It is a biological hive mind that turns a million soft-bellied scavengers into a single, armored leviathan. This collective intelligence suggests that the 10 billion didn't just die off in individual deaths. A hive mind of that scale doesn't simply vanish due to hunger. It makes a strategic decision. If the collective intelligence sensed that the Bering Sea had become a trap, the wall of shields wouldn't be used for defense, it would be used for the march. They moved as a single continental-sized carpet of chitin, shifting their entire biomass into the deep. The most chilling aspect of the snow crab's brain isn't its navigation or its coordination, but its persistence. In a landmark experiment, researchers tested the associative memory of crustaceans. They exposed them to a specific visual threat, a wooden shadow shaped like a predatory bird, and a simultaneous mild electronic pulse. They expected the crab to forget the association within hours. They were wrong. The crabs remembered the threat for 18 months. In a creature that may only live for 5 to 10 years, an 18-month memory is the equivalent of a human remembering a single terrifying afternoon for 2 decades. They possess a long-term potentiation that rivals primates. If a simple crustacean can remember a face or a threat for years, what else are they remembering? Do they remember the world before the ice? This brings us to the genetic memory hypothesis. Some theorists argue that because these creatures have remained virtually unchanged for millions of years, their memory isn't just limited to their own lifespan. Their neural pathways are hard-coded with the trauma of past extinction events. The snow crabs currently in the Bering Sea are the descendants of those that survived the last great melt. Their ghost navigator isn't just a map of the present, it's an archive of the past. When the water temperature rose by 3 degrees in 2022, it didn't just feel like warm water to the crabs. It felt like a recurring nightmare. It triggered a dormant ancestral memory of a world where the ice vanished and the oxygen died. They didn't wait for the disaster to happen. They remembered what happened the last time the water felt this way. The 10 billion did not disappear into the unknown. They returned to a sanctuary they had stored in their collective memory for 10,000 years. We treat them as mindless biomass, as a resource to be weighed in tons. But as the Bering Sea sits empty, we have to face a terrifying possibility. The crabs didn't leave because they were weak. They left because they were smart enough to remember what happens to those who stay when the world begins to burn. They are not just scavengers of the mud. They are the keepers of a cold, dark history, and they have decided that for now, humanity is no longer worth observing from the depths. They have retreated into the impossible map, leaving us behind in the silence of an empty sea. In the autumn of 2022, the scientific community didn't just witness a population decline. They witnessed a vanishing act that defied the laws of biomass conservation. To understand the scale of the 10 billion ghost incident, one must visualize the sheer physical volume of what was lost. 10 billion snow crabs represent roughly 7 million tons of living, breathing, calcium-armored life. If you were to lay them end to end, they would encircle the Earth multiple times. For decades, the Bering Sea was the most productive crab fishery on the planet. The red gold of the North sustained entire economies. Then, in a period of less than 14 months, the population plummeted by 90%. The official narrative provided by the National Marine Fisheries Service was swift and sanitizing, metabolic starvation. The theory suggested that because the water had warmed by a few degrees, the crab's metabolism spiked, causing them to starve to death because the food supply couldn't keep up. But there is a glaring, jagged hole in this explanation. Starvation leaves a trail. If 10 billion creatures starved to death in a confined shelf area, the seafloor should have been a whitewashed landscape of skeletal remains. Chitin, the material of crab shells, does not decompose quickly in cold, high-pressure water. It lingers for years. Yet, when the research vessels sent down their ROVs to document the graveyard, they found something far more unsettling. The seafloor wasn't covered in shells. It was empty. It was as if the population hadn't died, they had checked out. They had packed up and left the continental shelf entirely. While civilian scientists were looking for carcasses, the U.S. Navy's Integrated Undersea Surveillance System, IUSS, was tracking something else. In the late summer of 2022, sonar arrays designed to detect Russian Akula-class submarines began picking up a massive, low-decibel thermal signature moving across the floor of the Bering Canyon. It wasn't a submarine. It was a carpet of biological heat, miles wide, moving with a synchronized velocity of 0.5 knots. The military data tells a story the textbooks won't touch: a massive, linear, and highly organized migration toward the Aleutian Trench, a descent into depths where the pressure would crush a standard fishing boat like a soda can. Why would 10 billion individuals, spanning hundreds of miles, suddenly turn as one and march into the abyss? In the world of signals intelligence, we call this a global reset. On August 14, 2022, 3 separate Navy sonobuoys deployed to monitor seismic activity near the Ring of Fire recorded an acoustic event that has since been classified under the Anomalous Biological Phenomenon (ABP) protocol. It wasn't the song of a whale or the grinding of tectonic plates. It was a rhythmic, ultra-low frequency ULF pulse vibrating at exactly 7.5 Hz. In human terms, 7.5 Hz is infrasonic. It is felt in the chest rather than heard in the ears. But for a crustacean, whose entire body is a resonator for vibration, it is a command frequency. In laboratory settings, researchers have found that certain frequencies can trigger taxis, automatic, involuntary movement toward or away from stimulus. At the 7.5 Hz mark, the snow crab enters a state of hyperfocus. They stop eating. They stop mating. They stop fighting. They align their bodies to the source of the vibration and begin to walk. The 2022 exodus was triggered by what some fringe oceanographers are calling the recall. The signal didn't originate from the surface. Triangulation of the 3 sonobuoy hits placed the source in the Challenger Deep sector of the Aleutian Trench, approximately 7,000 meters down. This leads to a terrifying conclusion. Something in the deep, something that has been dormant for eons, began to broadcast. Was it a biological signal? A queen of the species we haven't discovered? Or was it something artificial? There are those who point to the fact that 7.5 Hz is remarkably close to the Schumann resonance, the Earth's own electromagnetic heartbeat. If the Earth's magnetic field is shifting due to core instability, the crabs might not be following a sound at all. They might be responding to a planet-wide alarm bell that only the primitive can hear. We often think of ourselves as the masters of the planet because we have satellites and sensors. But we are deaf to the Earth's true language. The snow crab, with its millions of sensory hairs and its copper-based blood, is a biological early warning system. They are sensitive to changes in pH, temperature, and magnetic flux that our most advanced instruments can barely detect. When 10 billion sensors suddenly flee a room, it's not because the room is slightly warm. It's because the room is about to explode. Since the exodus, seismic activity in the North Pacific has increased by 400%. The deep signal wasn't just a call to the crabs, it was a precursor to a massive geological or perhaps biological shift. The crabs aren't just retreating to the trenches, they are seeking structural sanctuary. The trenches are the most stable parts of the Earth's crust. If the magnetic poles are preparing for a flip, or if the methane clathrates under the permafrost are reaching a flash point, the deep trenches are the only place to survive the coming atmospheric fire. By moving into the abyss, the crabs have effectively isolated themselves from the biosphere we occupy. They have retreated into the cold vault, waiting for the surface cycle to end. Today, the Bering Sea is a haunting echo of its former self. The red gold is gone. The massive factory trawlers sit rusted in the harbors of Dutch Harbor and Nome. The ghost navigator has led its people away, and in their wake, they have left a graveyard of empty shells, but only the old ones, the ones left behind because they were too weak to hear the call. The 10 billion didn't starve. They were drafted. They are currently massing in the dark, miles below the reach of sunlight, forming a biomass of such density that it is literally altering the gravitational pull in certain sectors of the Arctic. They are waiting. What are they waiting for? If the crabs are the sensors, their departure is the final data point. They have sensed a shift in the command. For millions of years, the command was to populate the shelves, to scavenge the waste, to be the janitors of the North. In 2022, that contract was terminated. The new command is ascension, or perhaps preservation. The Bering Sea is now a graveyard of empty shells. They didn't leave because of the heat. They left because the command changed. And now, the throne of the North is empty. The ecological niche they occupied, the vast, frozen plains of the seafloor, is currently vacant. But nature abhors a vacuum. If the 10 billion have moved out, something else is moving in. Something that doesn't mind the heat. Something that was waiting for the janitors to clear the floor. As the ice melts completely and the last of the Arctic sentinels disappear into the trench, we must ask ourselves, what happens when the signal changes again? What happens when the 7.5 Hz pulse stops being a recall and starts being a release? The throne of the North is empty, waiting for its next occupant. But now go to watch the Creator that lurks on the Bermuda S Triangle, and if you want to have a marathon, go to walk our 2 hours compilation of sea encounters. See you.